side of the ball. So let's get right into it and let's work on how we are going to set this up in an actual game. The first thing we have to cover when trying to create transition offense is where will our attackman be when the ball is on the defensive side of the field. And so for us, we're going to put our right-handed attackman, A1, at the midfield line on the right side of the field. We're going to put our lefty attackman, or A2, on the left side of the field, also at the midline. Our third attackman, he's going to be probably our best player who can go with his strong hand and pretty good with his offhand. He's going to go 10 yards behind the midfield line right in the center. And we do this for two reasons. First, it's going to help them get into position into our L break and all of our other transition offense just a little quicker. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to allow A1 and A2 to make a play on the ball if the ball is squirting to the midfield line. So if our opponent throws a bad pass and it's rolling to the midfield line, they will lift the defenseman's stick, the ball will roll over, and we'll be granted possession on an over and back call. If we tip a pass and the ball rolls to the midfield line, we will once again lift a stick, probably try and push the defenseman out of the way, so the ball will squirt through and we'll be able to, try to get the ground ball on our offensive half of the field. The next thing we have to cover is how do we actually get into position. In our example, M1 is going to be carrying the ball down the field with no one guarding him, and he is going to initiate our fast break. As he's carrying the ball down the field, all of our attackmen are going to drop straight down the field and then wait to see what M1 does and react to him. So as M1's coming down the field, the biggest, most important thing that he has to do is he has to pick a side. I see it in every level of lacrosse. The coaches will be trying to run an L fast break, and the midi will go straight down the middle, and what he's essentially doing is he's shortening the defenseman's slide. Whereas if he picked a side and went almost away from the other attackman, he would make the slide of the defenseman a lot longer. So if M1 goes to his right, A2 is going to drop to bottom left, A3 is going to drop to bottom right, and A1 is going to be point top right. If M1 goes to his left, A1 is going to drop to bottom right, A3 is going to drop to bottom left, and A2 is going to be point on the left side. And so as you're thinking about this, this will allow our players to stay within their strengths, but also react to what's happening on the field, not just set up in a righty break all the time. Now, for you guys, if you would rather have your players know exactly which positions that they need to be in every time so that your team can be more successful, I absolutely recommend making sure that specific players are in specific locations and maybe always running a righty break or always running a lefty break. For me, I really think that their ability to read and react to a situation is a lot more valuable than understanding just one way of how to do things and that that's the right way. So that's why I make sure that our attackmen understand how they can rotate into either a lefty L break or a righty L break. As the offensive players are getting into position, we have to make sure that defensively we're stopping the ball. That's the first rule of any defense. If you can't stop the ball, you can't prevent goals. So we want to make sure we are sliding from the least dangerous player. And so in any L break, that's the point man. Because if you slide from any of the low players, they're going to be able to just catch the ball, turn, and have a really great shot. So we're going to be sliding from the point. So if M1 goes to the right, we're going to prepare to slide with D1. If M1 goes to his left, we're going to prepare to slide with D2. The last thing that we have to make sure that our defensemen are doing is that they're not sliding too early. We want to make sure that our defensemen are sliding just in time to reach a ball carrier who is dangerous. Because if we slide too early, and a lot of coaches call this sliding upfield, if we slide too early, the ball carrier has a ton of time to see the field, see the slide coming, make the best decision. On defense, we want to hold and then slide quickly and efficiently so that our offensive player has to read and react in as little time as possible. Because the less amount of time he has, the less he can observe the field, and the more likely he's going to make a bad decision and throw the ball away. Now that we understand how to set up an L fast break from the offensive and defensive ends, we're going to talk about 6 defensive concepts that we want to make sure that we are utilizing with our defense to make them as successful as possible. The first thing we want to make sure they're doing, as we always want to do, is that they're communicating. And within a fast break, we're going to have 3 calls that will let everyone know where each defenseman is. So the first call is point, and point means that I am the first player to slide, that I'm about to make a call that is ball as I slide. The second are right and left. And so in our example, when M1 goes to the right, D1 is going to be point, D3 will be right, and D2 will be left. The next thing we want to cover is when we want to rotate, and we always want to rotate defensively as a ball is being passed and not before. If we decide to rotate too early, our other players aren't going to have time to rotate with us, and we're going to leave somebody open. So as the ball is passed from M1 to A1, D3 is going to rotate up the field to cover A1, and D2 is going to rotate into position to split both A2 and A3. The third thing that we're going to cover is how we want players to rotate, and we never want our defensive players in transition to slide in straight lines. We want them to do what's called touch the hat. So if you can imagine there's a hat right in the middle of the hub, probably center of the goal, probably about 8 yards. We want to make sure that as our defensive players are rotating, that they're not rotating straight, that they're going to the middle and then using their approach angles to actively defend the players. If they go straight, it's too easy for offensive players to, just move just slightly and then get around them. The fourth thing we're going to talk about is holds, and a hold is pretty much standing your ground on the defensive side of the ball. So as the midi is coming in, if I'm the point man, I'm going to say hold until he gets to the spot where I can meet him at a dangerous spot. And by holding, I cut down on M1's time. The other thing you can do as a hold is you can actually fake slide. So if I fake like I'm going to slide to M1 and he throws it to A1, I can get back to A1 and then our other two players don't have to rotate. The fifth thing that we're going to talk about is where we want our players to recover to after they've slid and after their player passes the ball. We want to make sure our players are recovering to the most dangerous man who they are splitting. So if we look at our example, the ball was passed from M1 to A1, from A1 to A3. Now D1 has to know where he needs to recover to. And so currently he is splitting A2 and M1. He wants to make sure that he is recovering to A2 because A2 would be most dangerous in this situation. The sixth thing we're going to cover is what do we do with our trailer? And so our trailer is the first defenseman who gets into the fast break set. And so he has a bunch of different places that he can go, and it's not just to the center of the field. And it all depends on when he gets in. If you imagine a face-off that's pulled forward towards your defensive end and it starts this fast break, if the first defenseman in can cover the point man before the low defender has to come up to him, that's exactly where he wants to go. He wants to go to the next dangerous person so that we don't have to rotate again. You can really eliminate fast breaks pretty quickly if you send the first defenseman in to the point man so that no one else has to rotate. The key here is you have to communicate well enough so that you don't have two players rotating to the ball. Now that we've got those things covered, let's get into the actual defensive example. In this example, we have M1 coming down the field with a trailer defensive midi 1. M1 moves to his right and starts a righty break. D1 is point and will prepare to slide in order to meet M1 when he gets dangerous and not earlier, as this will open everything up. D2 is left and D3 is right. As D1 slides, D3 is now splitting A1 and A3. He has to cheat to A3 as he is the most dangerous player who he is splitting. If the trailer, defensive midi 1, can get in right now, he should recover to A1 and eliminate their advantage. In our example, we're not going to have him recover till we've gone through the full rotation, but if he can recover now, he should go to A1. As the pass goes from M1 to A1, D3 will rotate up to A1 by touching the hat and calling ball. D2 will touch the hat and rotate and say right by splitting A3 and A2 as both are equally dangerous. As he is going to touch the hat, he must take away this skip line and split both players. D1 will do his best to recover to A2 as he is splitting A2 and M1, and A2 is more dangerous. Now, this is going to take some time, and this is what the offense is trying to exploit. If defensive midi 1 is getting in, he should go to A2 right here, but must consider what D1 is doing so they both don't slide to the same spot. As the pass goes from A1 to A3, D2 will approach and say ball, D1 will get down to A2 and say right, and D3 will recover by touching the hat and taking away the skip lane from A3 to M1 and splitting M1 and A1. If the trailer gets in now, he will recover to M1. As A3 passes to A2, D1 will now have ball, D2 will be left with A3, and D3 will split M1 and A1 up top. By now, if the offense hasn't scored, we should have allowed other players to have gotten in and we should be recovered as a defense. Now we're going to go over the offensive side of the ball of the same play, but before we do, we're going to go over 4 points that we want to make sure our offensive players are doing. The first thing we've got to know as coaches is that the way we want our players to look at the game is through their